So here we are. So why don't we start with you, Adam, since you're up top, and Mr. Sci-Fi is live on the air. So there we go.
Yeah.
Cool.
Hi guys. Let me see. Oh, there it is.
Okay.
Let's turn that on
Great.
so that I can read the comments when they come along.
Swell. Sounds great.
I'm Adam Sartain. For those of you who don't know me, I think everyone knows me here.
Yes.
Hey, Adam.
So there we go. Let me
Yep.
turn that off.
Okay.
And there we go. And Tim Birdlog says hello.
Hello.
But yeah, I been having a busy day today. I was just manning the Space Command virtual booth at Virtual TrekCon.
How did that go?
Today. Mark joined me for a bit.
Yes.
I mean, it was pretty slow, but you know, it's the first day of it. And
Yes.
figuring out Zoom
Yes.
and the links and everything. So I think tomorrow will be a better day.
Yes. Well, yeah, we can all say that.
But
So-
yeah, I'll be manning the booth tomorrow.
Right.
And, Sunday as well.
Great. Terrific.
Thanks, Adam.
So-
What else? I've got. I've been getting auditions and stuff too. So
Oh,
great.
that's fun.
Anything interesting?
An audition for a. It's for a commercial. I did sign an NDA, so I can't really say much more about it.
Okay.
But it involves an accent that I'm very familiar with, I would say.
Okay. Great. Great.
Cool.
So
So,
Okay. Is
yeah.
there anything you need?
And I was on a like a podcast thing last night. Was it last night? Yeah, last night.
Cool.
On the East Coast with some comic book artists and stuff like that. And I mentioned Space Command and that we have a comic book, so
Yay.
I'm very interested.
cool.
Cool.
That's very good. So is there anything you need?
Yeah.
Is there anything you need, Adam?
Sanity.
Yes. There's that.
You're in the wrong country,
Sanity
honey.
would be nice.
Yeah. Jesus.
I know.
I'm gonna go back to Canada.
Yeah. Really.
Yeah.
Exactly. So well.
Two can.
Yeah. But so anything
But,
else, Adam?
I'm good for yeah.
I'll adopt you all.
I'm good.
Okay. Yay. 3 cheers.
Yay.
So are there any Mr. Sci-Fi questions yet, Adam?
No questions, but we have I made it from Guylinda, who
Great.
usually shows up late to these things. So
Great. Welcome.
Good on you, Guylinda.
Welcome. And spread the word about Mr. Sci-Fi. Let people know about Mr. Sci-Fi from pillar to post, and a lot's going to be coming up in the next few weeks. Tons and tons of interesting things. So great. So I guess Judith, I see you next on our screen. So why don't you take your
Okay.
turn?
Hi, my name is Judith Smiley. I'm from Montreal originally, through New York. Studied with Sam. Hi, sweetheart. There's my furry friends over
Yes.
there.
Yeah.
One of them, yes.
I've been really not doing much. Unfortunately, I have a very ill cat. Her time frame is getting smaller and smaller. And I'm just waiting for the end. She's under the bed right now. She comes out occasionally to eat, but that's not as often. So I've been running back and forth to Costco for antibiotics and sleeping in the heat with the train. And, you know, it's been all about the cat. Shout out to Mark and Elaine,
Yay.
who gave me their wonderful trilogy, Magic Time.
Mhm.
Now, if you guys have any money at all, go and buy all 3 books. Absolutely astounding.
Thanks.
Astounding. It's
I
just
will say,
absolutely
I
amazing.
own the first
The
one, and I
words are
just bought
so
the second.
luscious.
Thank you.
It's phenomenal. Just phenomenal.
Thanks. And Adam, you were saying?
I'm sorry.
Oh.
Go ahead.
No worries. I was just saying I own the first book and I just bought the second on Amazon.
Great.
I was buying something else and needed extra to get the free shipping. So I was like, oh, I haven't bought this yet.
That's good. And just
So there we go.
and just let everyone know, Magic Time is a trilogy that HarperCollins published, that we wrote, and Elaine and I wrote the pilot of the script that influenced the whole thing. And it's available in both hardcover, paperback, and audiobook, and we also did the audio play of Magic Time with Christina Moses and Armin Shimmerman. So there's a lot of different ways to access that material, and we're going to be making it into a series in the next few weeks and months.
If you're interested in buying the book, it's cheaper online.
Yeah. But do patronize your local bookstores too. So there we go. So go ahead. So Judith, anything else?
Judith, please.
I just, I don't know whether I hope she goes quickly now
Mhm.
or whether she lingers. That
Mhm.
whole.
Yeah.
She's 17,
Mhm.
so what can I do? That's all I can do.
Wow.
There's some other stuff that's going on, but I don't want to say anything because of poo.
Yes.
I did, however, talk to Judy Beecher.
Oh, okay.
I had written a short film about 4 years ago, and I thought to myself, because she's talking about coming back, and I thought, well, let me take a look at this. So I've been sort of whittling away at it, and I'm going to send it to her this week, as well as to my manager, who's interested maybe in producing it. We'll see. It's a very inexpensive film to produce.
Great.
I can do it with table members, and it will be fun.
Oh,
Cool.
great.
That's great.
And that's it. Just my other stuff, I'm not saying anything because, like I said, poo.
Mhm.
And that's it. And a poo for November 3rd, please God.
Yes.
That's it.
Okay. Yay. Now, also, we were talking about our dogs, and I've just been putting together an album of previous dogs that we've owned, and we had a dog named Lily, and here's a photo of Elaine with Lily. I'll hold this up. Let's see if I can get it here. There. So for those of you,
Oh my God, she could eat you for dinner.
yes, and so that's
Elaine, do
was-
you have a picture of Squirrel?
not at hand, but
Well, we have pictures of
we have
Squirrel.
pictures of her though.
Well,
Yeah,
we
she was a
have-
great dog. But yeah,
Well,
but Lily
yes.
was our Saint Bernard. She was 130 pounds.
Well,
She outweighed Elaine.
135.
That's a lot of poop to pick
Yeah,
up.
135. She was a wonderful dog.
She was the
Just
sweetest,
terrific.
sweetest dog. She was 135 pounds. I'm 93
Yeah, here's another
pounds.
Photo of her.
Oh, how beautiful.
Yeah, she was just
And
really
when
something.
When she chose to get in my lap, that was the end of it. I mean, I couldn't
Yeah.
get up until she chose to
Right, let you up.
move. Yes.
Yes, she was a great dog. So great. So Adam, do we have any Mr. Sci-Fi questions yet?
We do. We have right out the gate. We have a question from Hayes 494.
Great. Hi. Good to see you.
Who asks, would either of you be interested in watching Brandon Braga's new film, Books of Blood, on Hulu?
Well, I mean, I'm not that big. I assume it's made from Clive Barker's work. I'm not that big a Clive Barker fan. I know Brandon, of course, and I know Clive Barker, interestingly enough, but it doesn't thrill me, but I'm willing to have my opinion changed. They're just making tons and tons of movies and shows of pretty much any existing literary property, by and large. So, but I should probably check it out just to see what I think of it, firsthand. We're watching The Haunting of Bly House. We started watching that. There's a Russian sort of pandemic movie series that we just started watching on Netflix, et cetera, et cetera. But again, our days are filled with trying to make our stuff. So, it's doing our best here. So
but you can watch all kinds of disaster
Mhm.
on television.
yes, well, Elaine's speaking about the political arena, so but we
I
won't.
was
We
actually
won't.
speaking about both.
Yeah, exactly. So Dave Edison, you're the next on my screen. So do you want to go for it?
I
Hi,
do.
everyone. We saw something yesterday. I don't know why it was there. We recorded it on TCM. I had
Mhm.
never seen it.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost 50 years old. And I was better off when I hadn't seen it.
Yes.
Night of the Lepus.
Oh yes. Yeah, that's a singular movie. So well, there you go. Now you're a better man, Dave.
Well, you know what? I mean, for killer bunny films,
Yes.
you got that and you got the Holy Grail.
Yes, and Holy Grail, of course, is the best killer bunny movie ever. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Bar none.
But
It's
honestly,
sharp,
their
pointy
miniature
teeth.
work on it was not bad. But
Yeah.
other than that, ooh.
Yes.
Anyway,
Yes.
but,
Yeah.
so, but when we're not watching Killer Bunnies,
Yes.
it's Space Command all the time.
Yay! And
we so I was working on trying to do some research, trying to find out how to clear up one of those issues you were talking about in the notes you sent me.
good.
I will talk later. And,
Yeah.
a few possibilities.
Good.
And other than that, just moving forward, trying to get part 2 done.
Yeah.
If you care to, I'll let you mention what one of our other schemes is currently.
Which one?
The 116-minute scheme. If it's an appropriate time to mention that, I don't know if it is.
Yeah, nah. I mean, not yet. But let us just say that we are busy at work finishing the second hour of the pilot in terms of visual effects and all that stuff, and we hope to have that out, around January and shipped to all of our backers. And meantime, we're moving full steam ahead on all the other aspects of Space Command and the other shows that we're doing. So
Right.
it's
I
and
heard back from some of our VFX people you wanted me to
yes,
get in touch with, so
Yeah,
we
yeah.
can talk about that as well.
yeah.
And, other than that, I actually sent out submitted a screenplay this week.
Wow.
Wow.
Pretty exciting.
Cool.
I answered a query. They said,
Yeah.
sure, I'd like to read it.
Great.
I mean, it was an odd fit that not too many requests come up that say, well, this is a horror film with aliens.
Yeah.
And it could be a horror film or a horror comedy.
Killer rabbits.
And years ago, I had written a horror zombie film that had an alien link to it, a
Great.
little alien connection, and said, all right,
Great.
I'll send the reply, and they said, sure, we'd like to read it. So I sent that, and we'll see. I mean, a budget of $1 million is when we wrote this thing, it was kind of ambitious for that, but now you could probably do it pretty easily within $1 million with all the new VFX capabilities. So
Great.
we'll see what they say.
That sounds good.
Other than that, Space Command all the time. If you haven't, and if you want to read, actually want to see my picture book for grown-ups who can't believe in the unbelievable, The Man with the List.
Yay.
Check it out on YouTube.
It's great, by the way, guys.
It's also on Mr. Sci-Fi. Mark
Yes.
was nice enough to
It's
post it on Mr. Sci-Fi, and I got some very nice comments and
Yes.
and a few others.
Yes.
But yeah, so check it out. The Man with the List. You can go to YouTube and punch in Man List Picture. It
Yes.
should come right up.
Right.
I've animated it, narrated it, so
That's great. And it's the
whole book right there.
and it's the perfect holiday gift. So
It is. It is. What holiday is that?
any of them.
Halloween.
Arbor Day.
Oh,
So,
we
yeah.
haven't put up any- I just couldn't get into putting up any Halloween decorations
Ah.
this year.
Oh,
I
Shucks.
should have ordered, but
Yeah.
maybe next year for
I
a bit of a better.
I think you should offer it as
state.
a Halloween special, 10 cents off.
That's funny. That's funny.
That's-
Yep. Oh, we lost
We
you.
lost you.
Oh, you've just gotten. You have to unmute.
You muted.
I
There we
hope
go.
everybody stays well, and I intend to do the same with any luck.
Yay! Cheers.
Good luck.
So, is there another Mr. Sci-Fi question, Adam?
Oh yeah, we've got a bunch.
Good.
Our next question comes from Marcus Bisma,
Hi, Marcus.
which I think is new to
Yes.
the chat.
Yes.
So that's welcome,
Great.
Marcus.
Great.
He asks, what's some of your favorite sci-fi movies of all time?
Well, it's fun. Blade Runner, of course. We just watched Starship Troopers again. I got that in 4K. It's very fun. Things to Come from the 30s. Metropolis, the complete Metropolis, of course. What else? Alien. I love Aliens. God, there are many, many, many. If you watch Mr. Sci-Fi, 2001, of course, a genius, game changer. Forbidden Planet is fun. The Star Trek, the motion picture, Wrath of Khan, I love.
The green slime.
Robinson Crusoe on Mars is one of my favorites. The Martian, of course, and
Forget the one with Michael Rennie.
oh yeah, Stay the Earth Stood Still.
Day the Earth Stood
That's a
Still
great
is good
film.
one.
Yeah, the first one, not the Keanu one.
Actually, the Blob is pretty good.
Yeah, surprisingly good. Well, Steve McQueen is terrific in that, and but there's tons and tons and tons of stuff. I liked Blade Runner 2049. There's Prometheus and Alien Covenant are good if you turn the sound off, and and kind of ignore the people in the foreground. But it's there's tons of stuff. This Island Earth is fun. There's many, and but if you watch Mr. Sci-Fi, if you look at the different videos I've logged, I talk about most of these things and a good deal more. Solaris, the Russian version of Solaris. Fantastic Voyage is a mixture of fun and funky and goofy.
It's of its day. I'm surprised they haven't remade that one.
Yes, true, exactly, yes. But the Russian Solaris, directed by Andrei Tarkovsky, is wonderful, and so those are some of them. So let's see. I guess Heidi. I guess you're next.
Hello.
Star Wars.
Oh, Star Wars. Yeah, of course.
Hello.
Hi, Heidi.
Hi, good to be here. I'm Heidi Muro. I am a logger transcriber and production assistant. Today's been really busy because I had to script just one act of a script to be sent off to the network, but has to be so fine-tuned and exact. But I'm happy to be done with it and on to the next thing. And hopefully the next thing will also be helping out with Space Command.
Yay!
Yay! I'll just ask you guys anything to do this weekend or the next coming weekend?
Yeah, lots of stuff. David Bartlett can basically give you the lowdown on all that. We're readying the hospital, the futuristic hospital set, and there's tons of stuff to do. And it's I mean, we're basically in post and in prep at the same time. So there's a good lot of things to do, and also we'll be setting up the Zoom table read on Sweet Haven, the show I'm creating with Rockne O'Bannon. And there's lots of stuff.
So you could talk to David and say what's on the smorgasbord.
And, what's on the Lazy Susan? Yeah, absolutely. And absolutely. And by the way, Elaine mentioned smorgasbord. My favorite name for a restaurant ever was there was a smorgasbord on Pico near Bundy years ago when I was a kid, and it was called Viking Table, and it had this mural outside of these Vikings, chowing down on food, and that made sense. It was a smorgasbord, and then it closed, and another restaurant opened in the same location, but they didn't want to spend the money to change the name or or any of the decorations, so it became Viking Table Chinese Food, with the same mural of the Vikings on the outside, and I thought that was really perfect. So. That was really good. My favorite name of anything, I think, is there's a town in Minnesota named Savage, Minnesota, and there's a donut shop in that town, and the name of that donut shop is Savage Donut Paradise. And I just love that. That's just too great. So is there anything you need?
They could have just added chopsticks to the Viking mural.
Yes, that would have been ideal. Yes. So Heidi, how are you doing, and what do you need?
Oh, I'm doing well. I've got work, and I'm happy to help.
Oh, great.
Yay, 3 cheers. Now, for those on Mr. Sci-Fi, if you're new to Mr. Sci-Fi and wonder who are these disembodied voices, for almost 30 years, Elaine and I have run a roundtable of writers and directors and actors and producers that pre-pandemic meets in person at a restaurant each Thursday night. And we have offshoots all over the country, but because of the pandemic, we're meeting on Zoom. So that's why we're sort of doing a simulcast between Mr. Sci-Fi and our table meeting. So there you are. So, okay. So another Mr. Sci-Fi question?
Yeah, that brings us to our next
Sure.
Mr. Sci-Fi question.
Great.
Which I would also like to mention to the folks, to the Mr. Sci-Fi folks watching, that we will get to your question in the order it was asked. But if you want to jump ahead to the top of the line, we do have super chats available for any amount of money.
You can slip the maitre d'. You can.
We appreciate all donations, even if it's a buck.
Yeah. Enjoy the show.
In the past,
that's funny.
Basically, whatever you type within reason.
Yes.
Within reason. I'm not going to spout out, obscenities or anything.
No, but here's something for your trouble. Yeah, that's great.
Exactly.
And
So,
and the other.
to our question.
And all super chat funds go to the Space Command.
Yes. And the other thing to mention, I mentioned it earlier, is before I was a writer, I was a visual artist. My degrees in painting, sculpture, and graphic arts from UCLA, and I gave up art to pursue writing in my early 20s. But I've just put out on Mr. Sci-Fi. If you go to Mr. Sci-Fi, there's our Space Command store on Teespring that you can click through to below the videos. And I've just put out my drawing of Obi-Wan Kenobi as a T-shirt. So you can buy the Mark Zicree Obi-Wan Kenobi shirt, and that is a unique item. So I highly recommend it. And if you have a friend or a family member who's a Star Wars fan, particularly if they're a Star Wars fan who's an atheist, a combo gift of Dave's book and that T-shirt would be a great Christmas idea. So so great.
But we actually, as we were speaking, so I'm going to not ask the question I was going to ask,
okay,
and instead I'm going to ask this huge $20 super chat.
Thank you, thank you, Stephen.
Stephen Mulvey, who says hello, and what is your favorite Star Trek series?
Well, the one that was really the most influential in my life was the original one, because it came out when I was 10, and I would not be what I am today if not for the original. So that's the one that really, warped me and made me, this person who sits before you. The other answer that I could say is Space Command is my favorite Star Trek series, because I'm trying to do for the current audience what Star Trek did for me, which is create something that shows that we can come together and create a hopeful future, a future worth living in. So, but truth to tell, every version of Star Trek has had something in it that made it interesting, and even the ones that are less than perfect, like Discovery, Doug Jones is terrific in it. There's always something that makes it intriguing, interesting. I mean, whether it's Star Trek Voyager or whatever, so I think Star Trek The Next Generation was a terrific show. DS9 had wonderful characters and some great episodes, et cetera, et cetera. So there's always something that makes it worth checking out. I haven't watched Lower.
What's your favorite episode of DS9?
Of Beyond the Stars, Far Beyond the Stars. So but I haven't watched.
That's a good choice.
It is, and I haven't watched Lower Decks yet. I've been hearing good things about it, so hopefully that's good. But I'm kind of busy right now. So let's see. So Carol, you're next on my screen. So why don't you go for it?
Thank you. Hi everybody. Well, here I am with a list again. Adam, thank you for taking my call. Appreciate that. Did anybody have a problem with Gmail, getting on their Gmail today? I felt like
no.
the face of it was changed and I couldn't recognize it.
How weird. We didn't have that problem here.
Yeah, so I'm going to look into it too. See if it was my computer or singling me out because they hate me.
That's probably it.
That must be it.
Yeah, that must be it.
Probably.
Yeah.
Please remember to tell Angelique hello. We haven't seen her in so long.
Yes.
So,
yes.
Where's my little list? Here, American Film Market is the beginning of November, and they're doing it on Zoom.
Yes.
Usually it's very expensive. It's like $200 a day to go to, so that's prohibitive. This year they're doing it for $195 for Illume and for new people for the whole week.
Wow.
Okay.
So I called up there and I said, I just have a whole bunch of scripts and stuff. I said, is it worth me coming? They were very nice and said, sure, good idea. So I'm going to go. I'm going to do that. I'm going on Zoom. I'm going to go cold. But I looked at the list of exhibitors, the list of people who are open to talking to each other and other people. And there's like 80, 90 people on the exhibitors list. Maybe half are from LA. I'm not saying like Long Beach or anything. I mean like LA, Hollywood. And so I'm looking at this list going, I'm sure I'll figure it out. Do you have any suggestions of who to target? Because they're very open once you sign off and you're accepted.
Yes.
They're very, the companies are very nice. They're very open to talking to you.
Yes.
But there's so many companies. It's like, well, where do I start? I have so much stuff. And there's so many companies. Too many suggestions.
Yes, Elaine does.
Yeah,
Elaine
I've
does.
done the AFM quite a few times. I would always start out a few days beforehand, and I would go over the list of buyers, and and I would say, given my material, which buyers are suitable for which material in terms of star level, potential budget, demographic, who would make sense as a good fit. Like if somebody does multi-million-dollar action films, that wouldn't be a fit for me. But other buyers are. So at first I would target the people who fit into all of those categories, plus I liked their aesthetic. And I liked their distribution pattern. Like I read a couple of distributors and I read up what they bought. And my problem with them was everything sounded interesting. It seemed to be in my budget range and my level actor range. But I really seek out independent film, right? And I live in LA. And I'd never seen any of their movies. And so that meant that they had a slight problem with distribution, in my view.
I see.
And so if I'd never heard of them, and I'm in Los Angeles and I'm on the hunt for that stuff, I'm thinking, I don't know about that. So I would be looking for my aesthetic, budget range, demographic, and what did I think of their release pattern? Then I would circle those people, because then there was a chance that we would be a fit, a match.
Mm-hmm.
And I would then, create they were in person, but it's always good. They're fairly rushed. And so I had my pitch down to 30 seconds. And I could follow that up with a 1-minute pitch to a full pitch. So when I was at that point, I was working as a producer too, and I'd say, do you ever join with other producers? Do you ever like those producers? If they said no, I'd say, thank you, I really like your films, and I'd walk out.
Right.
And if they did, I'd say, well, I've got this, and I give them the 30-second pitch,
Mm-hmm.
and if that seemed to be of interest, I had several levels of pitches, but my main concern was that because they're rushed, I could be out of there in 30 seconds and not bother them.
Mm-hmm.
Or I'd hook them. So, but the main thing was I would spend, a couple days in advance going through the entire, of course it was much bigger at that point.
Yes.
But I would research everybody so I wouldn't waste time. And then I would put on my amiable hat.
Yes.
Because sometimes they were like very friendly in explaining things to me, like why my movie could not make a profit if they spent over $500,000 on it. And the next person with the same project that I was selling would say, oh, that's a $20 million movie.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because one of them made cheap movies and one of them made expensive movies.
Yes.
And I would just listen to what they had to say, because they have a habit of not knowing
what they're talking about.
Well, it's not what they're talking about. They know their own little crevice.
Yes.
They know that little piece of the industry. And I would just listen to them and mark down what the parameters were, but I would never correct them.
Yes.
Because they were telling me their truth, and I would say, okay, these people only know how to make and market $500,000 movies tops. These people only know how to do the blockbusters. $20 million, $200 million, whatever.
Yes.
So I would just make notes and never criticize, never contradict.
Right.
They would just tell me their truth, but I'd say, okay, this is for this kind of thing. So that's basically it. I would just have an upbeat, fast, professional 1, 2, 3 pitch, and out. And sometimes they'd say, oh, can you come back? And then we'd have a longer conversation.
Yes.
But that would have to be scheduled with their appointment person.
Yes.
They were moving pretty fast at the first pass.
I'll let you know how it works out on Zoom.
Yes.
Okay.
And
I'm just for kicks and giggles. I mean, I'm just really, I need it right now.
Right.
Yeah, no, I think it's
I
good.
don't have to lose,
Yes. I mean, here's one way of looking at it. If you don't take an action, if you don't do anything, it guarantees that nothing will happen. If you take any action, there's a possibility that something will happen. So you're increasing your chances just by doing something. And that's useful to keep in mind. And often in my career, the things that happen are not the things I expect, but they're things that are quite wonderful.
And I think you'll have a jump on a lot of people
We
because
will.
because nothing is the way it was,
No.
and things are changing really fast.
Yes.
And so you'll gather a lot of right now information
Yes.
where anybody talking about yesterday or day before yesterday is going to be incorrect.
That's right. Yeah.
It's really interesting. I'll be happy to disseminate whatever I learn.
Great.
Cool.
Great. Thank you.
I'd be happy. And I have just something nice to tell you, show you.
Sure.
Yesterday I was saying, I would like someone from my past to swoop in. This was so bizarre, I swear. This is my thought before I went to bed. I would like someone from my past to swoop in and just call me. I don't care if it was a high school boyfriend or some director in New York. And I wake up this morning and on my email, I've not talked to this girl in 24 years. We were in a show together. We passed in New York. We went to the Auburn Playhouse and Theater. He writes me, is this the Carol Field from the da-da-da-da show, the Auburn thing? And I was so excited, and I found our picture of the show we were in. See it?
Oh my God.
Here's me. Here's Kathy.
Wow.
The director Sasha was Liza Minnelli's stand-in. This guy, they did a solo in a Saturday Night Fever as the corpulent dancer, but they never used it. And it was a wonderful, wonderful little show, and I was just so I fished my wish.
Wow, that's great.
I wanted someone to swoop in, and someone swooped in.
Well, there you go. Well, that's great. 3 cheers. Yay. Bye. So, Adam, do we have another Mr. Sci-Fi question?
We do. I was going to say, next time ask for $1 million, Carol.
Yes, really.
So before I get to our old question that I was going to ask,
we
have another super chat.
Yay!
By Linda.
Sure.
Who says I just need to send some love and see if this works. It does work, Guy Linda.
Terrific.
So.
Great. Well, thank you so.
So our question is from Arkansas Big Dog Hensley.
Yes.
Who asks, who says, I hope you all are doing fine. I was wondering how politics play into filming shows or making movies. It says the politics, so I'm thinking like the politics of the industry.
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking about, those are two separate questions, of course. I mean, often when I'm on a show, we don't discuss politics unless somebody chooses to, like if the showrunner chooses to, then yeah. But generally, I don't talk politics because someone who may be a wonderful writer might be politically on a very different beam than mine, and I don't want to cause division. I want to work well together with people. But in terms of office politics, it's very important to, several things are very important: to never gossip, to never take sides if there are cliques, just kind of to go there, do your work, be supportive of everyone, just kind of be there to solve the problem, not be a problem. And, and again, the people I work with, when I'm hiring people, it's the same deal. I don't want division. I want everyone to be kind of marching in the same direction, or carrying the weight up the mountain. And so you look for people who are there to do the job, who are positive and cheerful, and and kind of, I've been very lucky in my career. I haven't had coworkers who've been a nightmare. We've all been there to do a really good show together, and that's very gratifying.
It was once very telling. We were sitting in an office waiting to pitch something, and it was like a central thing, and people's doors were open, and an executive was talking to the person just under him on the phone, and the person under him on the phone was clearly very, very angry because a fellow employee had done something unfortunate, and he was furious that this person had done this unfortunate thing. And the fellow who was in his office, who was above him, who was talking to him, he was getting extremely uncomfortable with this other man's anger, because the other man was outraged, and it became pretty clear pretty quickly that this man's fury was more uncomfortable for this executive than what the other guy had done wrong. And that he was getting himself into trouble by trying to clean this up, which the boss thought of as a small matter, especially compared to having to deal with someone's rage.
Yeah.
So even if
don't
you're
be part
in
of
the
the
right,
problem.
don't be part of the problem. if you have a concern, then you can bring it up and say, I have a concern about this. Should I just let it go, or do you want me to do something about it? That would be fine. But to come at your, at somebody else in the hierarchy with a rage, usually people don't have the time or emotional energy to deal with that.
Right.
So you have to be cautious in that regard.
Okay. Cool. So on our screen, let's see. David Bartlett is next.
David.
So can you? There you go. Go for it.
Hi.
Yeah. Hi.
I am David Bartlett. I'm a filmmaker, a teacher, human rights activist, and a co-producer of Space Command.
Yay!
Also the visual effects producer and the crowdfunding producer, which we did set up today, and running the studio that we just built, and head of production, and casting, and color correction. I don't know what all. Post-production. I don't know if I forgot anything. I'm sure Dave will remind me. So, Space Command is going in a very interesting direction now. It is expanding.
Yes.
We're finishing visual effects hand over fist. We are building sets like crazy. We're about to shoot about 5 weekends of sets and about 7 sets and something like 25 or 30 scenes.
Cool.
Which is cool. What's called the framing story, which is a portion at the beginning of and ending of an episode, of many episodes, where there's certain stories that are tied together like bookends. The episode itself, and that's what we're about to shoot. So that's very cool. We're doing very COVID compliant shoots. So we have everyone in mask. There's 2 COVID compliant people on the set, myself and my assistant Vita, and then we have an actual COVID person who's there who's only doing that job, which is required. Which the last time we shot was our very own. Oh my God,
James Moorer.
James Moorer.
Yep.
Who loved pancakes.
Yes.
He was there all day and all evening.
Yes.
And very cool with us.
A man among men.
Very well. No one got ill.
No.
Or got in any trouble, and everything was awesome.
Yes.
So we've got it down now. So anyone that wants to come and help, you can rest assured
Right.
we're pretty safe and compliant and have all sorts of thermometers.
Yes.
And
Well,
you will be, as you're walking around, you may have a monitor walk up to you and say, too close, too close, too close, too close.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sometimes
But
that happens. In fact, Elaine knows that because she's the one that got busted.
Yeah.
Close to the rest of us.
but
She got her very own chair moved out of the way.
yes, it's funny.
Right up by camera and was a little isolated in terms of distance, but right in the center of the action. So it actually worked out really well.
But it's interesting, David, in that regard, because I was just emailing back and forth with J.J. Abrams yesterday, and he was talking about the new COVID compliance costs. And I was very glad that I was able to email him back saying we've been shooting with COVID precautions as per SAG guidelines, and no one came down with COVID. So I think that was
It
good.
didn't cost 5% over the budget either. I
No.
should tell them that you have to explain to them how we did it.
We'll talk about that. So, but okay. And what else?
My background is I made my first film when I was 10. I grew up I was born in Seattle and grew up in Beaverton, Oregon, near Timberline Lodge, where I was last week, which those of you who were on your show, I showed some videos and some details of that. That was awful fun. It was great to be relatively isolated. I did break the rule. A friend of mine said you can't have a holiday unless you've gone more than 7 days, you don't do any work, and you don't see any family. I broke all 3 of the rules. But I was still gone and having a good time through some of it. It was well worth it. So, that turned into high school, making more films, doing theater, managing movie theaters, and finally moving here in 1980, where I started working right away on the biggest film shop in Hollywood, called Under the Rainbow, which are Chevy Chase, Carrie Fisher, and 50 midgets, they were called at the time. Midgets and dwarves. They weren't little people at the time. But they were telling the story, true story of when the Wizard of Oz was made, and they found all the midgets and dwarves they could from all over and brought them to one place. They'd never seen so many of them at the same time, so they were crazy and had all kinds of drinking parties and drugs. And it's a true story. And took over a hotel in Culver City and trashed it. And this is the story, a comedy set around that setting. So that was my first film set. Was camera setup was a brand new Panavision camera on a Zeus crane, which is a 40-foot extension crane, swooping out over the Pacific Ocean with Queen Mary. And in the background, it was dressed up like 1942, and it had Chevy Chase and Carrie Fisher and all these dwarves and midgets, and 200 extras and period costumes coming off the Queen Mary. That was the very first camera setup I ever saw. So I had a very good introduction. And then I had a very good introduction to the other half of life, which is working with Roger Corman and the low budget films made at the time, with a production designer at the time called Jim Cameron. And I learned how to build sets and do visual effects on extremely low budget projects.
Yes.
So
Cool.
I had an advisor at the time also, which was Robert Wise, who directed and produced The Sound of Music and West Side Story, and he did The Day the Earth Stood Still and The Andromeda Strain and everything else that was awesome. That you couldn't quite remember who directed it. That's pretty much was Robert Wise. And he also won 4 Oscars. He was also the editor of Citizen Kane.
Yay!
So that. So he was my first advisor, and that went really well. So I started working in low-budget independent films, and I got into big-budget sound design films. I worked on Pulp Fiction and Total Recall, Speed, and Tremors, and Predator 2, and a bunch of other films like that. And then I got back into independent films of my own and other people's, and I've won 65 Film Festival awards. So
great.
That's really kind of my background.
Cool.
So now 2 things. One is Space Command.
Yay.
You can work on Space Command, or you want to volunteer for Space Command, you can do both. If you're me, you can email me or call me. I'll put my email on the sign here, the chat, and it's davefilms@hotmail.com. If you want to, if you're on Mr. Sci-Fi, you can also contribute, no problem. Or in Pico Rivera, and the balmy 100 degrees it is every day during this fabulous heat wave.
Yes.
But make do, and we're all code compliant.
Yes.
Building sets and ready to shoot things, that sort of thing.
And David, one thing you can mention also is that, you know, some of our team is not in Los Angeles. Some of our team isn't even in America. They're overseas. And so for those who might want to help Spaceman, but you're not in LA, again, you can reach out to us, either to David Bartlett or myself, and we'll be happy to find something for you to do, because every little bit helps. And that's how we get stuff accomplished, you know. So
I've had helpers, volunteers, and paid people both in UK, Portugal, Brazil, Dominican Republic. My assistant is currently Dominican Republic. Our head of crowdfunding is in Brazil, is in Bolivia, and we've got people all over doing that. So he's absolutely right. You do not have to be in LA to do that. You certainly don't have to be in Pico Rivera.
Our tentacles reach broadly.
Yes.
No one escapes.
Yes.
So that said, also we have also got the table email. If you are interested in being on the table email, or having troubles with the table email, you can contact me about that, and I can do that with you too. So anybody watching this broadcast can qualify to be on the table email and a member of the table.
Great.
So again, my email will get you going on that, and I think that's kind of it. I kind of told a story I haven't really told before. I always wanted to do that each week, you know, bring a story I've never told. Mark suggested that. I think it's a good idea. So I'll come up with a different one next week.
Sure. Great.
I don't know Rainbow stories, not one I've told very often.
Okay.
So,
Cool.
There's a story about Under Rainbow. I took a nap there. I found out that being on a set, even if you're not doing anything except observing the director, was extremely tiring. So I took a nap on the captain's bridge at the Queen Mary, and across there was a bunk with someone else taking a nap. It was Mako. He was a very famous Japanese actor. He did all the Japanese parts in the 60s and the 70s, and he's very good. If you see any films in those years that had Japanese characters, and then Mako played the part.
That's fun.
And it was very good and lots of fun. We sort of nodded to each other. It's like,
that's great.
Yeah, we're taking a nap.
So if you're going to put together stories and you had 60 all those film awards, why don't you share a story with one of them? I mean, next time that made you the craziest.
Okay, sure, that's fun.
Okay.
And then one thing I will mention, David, off something you said. I've been thinking about James Cameron. This is a Mr. Sci-Fi commentary I'll do in the near future. One thing that nobody seems to notice about Cameron, which is very interesting, is most directors make their reputations, make their careers on making movies of already established successful properties, like the guys who are doing the Marvel movies, or JJ doing Star Trek and Star Wars and so forth. Jim Cameron has made a career making hugely successful movies that were original with him. And so that's amazing when you think about it, going all the way from, I mean, Alien, I guess, would be the exception, but with Terminator, with Titanic, with Avatar, with all these films, it was him, basically, and even with Aliens, he had a storyline that he was working up, and he adapted that to be a sequel to Alien, and but so he's really actually blazed a path, out of his own imagination. That's pretty impressive, Oh.
The thing about Aliens too is that Alien is a horror film, Aliens is an action film.
That's right. That's right. Exactly. Yes.
I don't know if it's apocryphal, but I heard that the coverage on Aliens was just shoot it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that's a longer story, but we can tell that next time as well. So great. But 3 cheers, David Bartlett, ladies and gentlemen. So is there?
By the way, about Roger Corman, hadn't seen this in years. We've been catching up on films, and for Halloween, we're dragging out some monster films and horror films. Watch the original Little Shop of Horrors.
Oh God.
Oh my God.
Which is fortunately about an hour and 4 minutes.
Yeah.
But
That's
it's interesting to watch.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's directed by Corman, and some interesting things about it. Nice little title sequence.
Yes.
The musical is better. Don't know if they'll ever finish the remake of the musical they're working on. But
yeah.
Anyway,
but one thing that's interesting about the musical.
Frankenstein film is very interesting. You should check that out.
Huh. Cool. Well, also Little Shop. Oh.
It's Frankenstein film.
Mm-hmm.
Frankenstein Unbound or Unlimited or Uncensored or something.
Yeah. But the Little
I think. Yeah, it's a good one.
Little Shop of Horrors, the musical.
Proud Julia.
Yeah. Little Shop of Horrors, the musical. If you get the DVD, the Blu-ray with all the extras, it includes the half-hour ending of the movie that's completely different, because they have an ending where the plant grows huge and attacks cities, and the army is called out, and they previewed it, and people hated it. And so they had to reshoot an entirely different ending to the movie. And they now have that original ending as an extra, and it's really fascinating to see the movie.
Actually not an extra. You can watch the movie
with that ending. Wow.
And
it is far superior with that ending.
It's essentially the original ending, and it was expanded into the musical, and they just expanded it further.
Yeah.
When they shot the musical.
Yeah. Pretty crazy.
We had the opportunity to see it in
on stage in LA before it was made into a movie. When it was just a musical, it was terrific.
On Westwood.
It was great.
And what they had is above the entire audience area, they had it rigged where when the plants were rampaging on the stage, where tentacles dropped down from the ceiling over everybody.
On top of everyone in the audience.
The entire audience.
Yeah.
Like a big shock.
Those were the days.
Yeah.
Those were the days. So okay.
Funny story about that.
Yes.
Little Shop was the first musical I ever acted in.
Well, there you go.
Really?
That's great.
Not like an official production.
Right.
In college, but still, it was the first
great.
musical I was ever.
Wow! Congratulations. Good. That's great. Yay! So is there a Mr. Sci-Fi question, Adam?
Yeah. Let's go to another question from Hayes494.
Great. Hi, Hayes.
Who asks, would you like to see a Star Trek series based off of House of Cards that follows the rise of a populist Federation president?
It's a little apples and oranges, I mean, my real answer to that would be anything is possible if it works. I mean, like Breaking Bad. If you just hear about it, it doesn't sound like it would work, and then you watch it and it does. Same with Better Call Saul. There's a lot. So almost anything can be made to work if talented people take a crack at it. So I'm not averse to what you're suggesting, but it's not something I'm going to be, immediately going to my word processor to make happen. But it was very, very fun working on developing the Captain Sulu TV series, and I'm really glad that Michael Reeves and I took a swing at that, because that's a show I really would have loved to have seen on a weekly basis. And you can, of course, watch World Enough in Time, which is the Captain Sulu episode we did on Mr. Sci-Fi. Yeah, it's on the landing page. So let's see. So Brian, I guess you're next if you want to go for it.
Hey, Brian Hessick, filmmaker from St. Louis originally, and came out to USC Film School.
Cool.
Basically, since college until about a year ago, was working in distribution, and now I'm finally getting into the stuff I love, which is making stuff. So I've been doing storyboards, mostly learning that at this point. I can draw well, but I haven't learned any of the programs yet that they all use now. And dividing my time, doing a lot of writing. I just wrote a spec episode for a series that Margaret Gushwitz knows is pitching right now.
Great.
My dad just read it, and it's funny. He said it reminds him of a Twilight Zone episode. So I really have to check that series out. I've only remember a few from my childhood, but after hearing conversations here, and my dad said that. So
well, I've heard Twilight Zone is good. So and if you ever want to hear me talk for 30 hours, buy the Blu-ray, because I did 52 commentaries on the Blu-ray.
Well, now I know something to get my dad for Christmas.
Yeah, that Blu-ray set is pretty amazing, because I not only did commentaries with the writers who were alive at that point and the directors who were alive at that point, and some of the actors, but I also did commentaries with some of the showrunners who are now active, who were inspired by Serling, like Matt Weiner, who created Mad Men. He and I sat down and did an audio commentary on 2 of the Twilight Zone episodes, and I did the same with Neil Gaiman, a bunch of other folks too. Joe Dougherty, who was the executive producer on Pretty Little Liars. I mean, it was fun to sit down with them and get their take on Twilight Zone, because they were so influenced by it and so inspired by it. So it's a terrific show. It's phenomenal. There's nothing like it, nothing at all.
Yeah. I know the stories and I know the setups, and I was a big fan of Hitchcock's series, and it seems like they have a similar style.
Yes. Though Twilight Zone is consistently of a higher quality, but the Hitchcock show was great. And the fun part about the Hitchcock show was that he wanted it to have dark endings, and the network wouldn't allow that. So the compromise they came up with was that the stories would have these dark endings where bad guys get away with it, and then he would come on and give this ridiculous explanation for how they ultimately were caught or had their downfall, and that was just charming. He did a great episode that he directed called Lamb to the Slaughter, where Barbara Bel Geddes kills her husband with a leg of lamb, a frozen leg of lamb, and then the cops come and they don't suspect her at all, and she cooks it and serves it to them. And at the end of the episode, one of the cops says, "I'll bet the clue is right under our noses."
The murder weapon.
The murder weapon.
I have the bone
Well,
on
it's
my
funny. The
dog.
one I wrote is the opposite. It's the drama throughout. You're almost crying for the guy in the end zone comedy.
Yeah.
But,
great. So how are you doing, and what do you need?
I'm doing great, yeah. And the other thing I'm up to is Space Command.
Yay.
I just did last week, but I'm wearing in honor in the Overlook Hotel.
Cool. That's great. That's great.
And yeah, I can say, Dustin's a great teacher, and just being around him, you'll learn stuff. And as far as set goes, if anyone's worried, the air quality is much better than it was a month ago.
Good.
And they have 2 large fans, so any coat would be blown right out the door. Good.
Thanks. Well, we appreciate the help, and the wonderful thing is to get stuff shot, get stuff made, get stuff out to the world. I mean, that's and the fun part about science fiction is that you're making a whole universe, a whole world, and so to be able to build an alien spaceship or any of that stuff, I was mentioning today when I was on the little web chat with the Star Trek convention. In fact, I think we now own 11 spacesuits, something like that, and so that's pretty fun, from various productions and ones we've had our team build on their own.
That one in the lobby.
Yeah, that's fun.
And they all fit Mark.
They do. And so, yep. Some people dress in women's clothes. I dress in spacesuits. But so great. So go ahead, so Brian. Is there anything that you need?
No, not at this point. I'm just available.
Great.
To help if I can on anything. I did have a Mr. Sci-Fi question.
Yes.
What you said earlier.
You bet.
You already, I guess, answered my Prometheus and Covenant question, but have you seen any of the Star Trek Trooper sequels? Because I haven't.
Yes.
I'm wondering if we're checking out.
Yes, they're interesting. Like, for instance, there's one. The first movie is the best by far, though the Heinlein family, the Heinlein estate, hated it because Heinlein wrote it, in 1959. Robert Heinlein. It won the Hugo Award for Best Novel of the Year. It has a very interesting history. Heinlein was one of the top science fiction writers of the 50s and 60s and 70s. And each year throughout the 50s, he would write one adult science fiction novel and one juvenile science fiction novel that would be sold to like school libraries, things like that. And he did this year after year after year. And Starship Troopers was originally written to be one of his juveniles, but because it was about a character joining the military and fighting in a war, the publisher rejected it. So he got angry and he immediately turned around and submitted it as an adult novel and sold it. And of course, as I say, it won the Hugo, the top award in science fiction. But he was a very right-wing guy. And he was very pro-military. He'd been in the Naval Academy, all that stuff, and but Paul Verhoeven, when he was brought aboard to direct the film, years later in the 90s, he had grown up. He was Dutch, and he'd grown up under the Nazi occupation. So he saw Heinlein's work as being basically proto-fascist, and so he said, well, let's make a Nazi science fiction movie out of this. And so the uniforms are very much modeled on Nazi uniforms, and it's very much in the style of like Leni Riefenstahl, Riefenstahl, yes, who did Triumph of the Will and Olympia 1936, and so it's very deliberately a satire where it's a Nazi science fiction movie commenting on militarism, and so it's a terrific film. But Heinlein's widow just really hated it, and a lot of Heinlein aficionados hate it. But so then they did a sequel, and there was Phil Tippett, who did the stop motion animation and a lot of the design work in Starship Troopers. He was brought aboard, I believe, to direct it. And I think the deal was that he would do the visual effects in exchange for being able to direct it. And the second one, and it was shot, I think, in South Africa. And it's on a much lower, it's on a much more contained scale than the first film. It's not nearly as entertaining. And then the third one, the writer of the first film, whatever his name is, he wrote and directed the third one, and that brought back some of the satire, the political satire, because by then we were in Iraq and all of that. And it's better than the second one, but it's still not as good as the first. And then they've also done computer animated films of Starship Troopers, and I've seen one of those, and it's okay. And they also did a TV show called Roughnecks that my friend Michael Reeves wrote, which again was CG animation, no live action, but I think the second and the third ones are worth checking out. They're interesting. And the third one, they brought back Casper Diem, who starred in the original one 20 years later, and he looks great. He looked great. So yeah.
We met someone whose friend had animated the Bugs.
Yes.
And the animator of the Bugs loved bugs, kept bugs.
It was his dream job designing those bugs.
He just loved to animate bugs. It wasn't hard. It was like this. I get to animate bugs. And
yes.
He was just delighted.
No, it's yeah. No, I love that film. I think it's really a keeper. So great. So anything else you need, Brian? Yeah. Yes, David.
I don't want to interrupt if he's not done.
No.
I forgot I was going to say one more thing. You were talking about the city with strange names and strange restaurants and whatnot.
Yes.
This is not to compete with that, because I think you're doing stuff. But there's a city in Oregon called Boring, Oregon. Drove through it, coming back from the mountain. This is what I found there.
And what does it say? It's a little hard to read on the screen.
It's the Boring Bar.
That's fun. That's worth getting a T-shirt.
Yeah.
That's definitely worth getting a T-shirt.
It says fresh local burgers and more. Friendly, free pool, live music, Boring Bar.
Yeah, that's good.
Boring music too, yeah.
That's great. That's great. Yeah.
The only other thing I would add is I love Heinlein. He's probably the only fiction writer that I can just keep reading.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I love his juveniles. I love Citizen of the Galaxy. Have Spacesuit Will Travel is a great book. They've tried to make a movie of it for many years. And
Podcane of Mars.
Podcane of Mars was another one of his juveniles that was rejected. So he made it. He wrote it as an adult novel. It's actually got two different endings. One that was Heinlein's original ending, and one that was the one that was published. Now you can actually read it with the original ending, which is darker.
One of my favorite Heinleins is The Door into Summer.
Yes.
Moon is Ours Mistress.
Yeah, there's a lot.
One of my favorite books books of all time is A Stranger in a Strange Land.
Yes, and so Heinlein was a very interesting writer, very influential, and of course, Destination Moon was another one of the great science fiction movies, and Heinlein wrote that, through George Pal's, direction and producing. So yeah, there's a lot of great stuff. Also, by the way, another movie I didn't mention was The Time Machine, which I love, the George Pal one, and of course 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea with James Mason. I mean, there's a lot of great science fiction movies, God knows. So anything else you need, Brian?
Thanks.
Yay! So beyond Brian's question, is there another Mr. Sci-Fi question, Adam?
In fact, we have now two super chats.
Cool.
Another one from Stephen Mulvey.
Yes.
Who's by the way donating in New Zealand dollars. I hope that's all right.
Thank you. Yeah. We'll take wampum. We'll take anything.
Yeah.
Well,
so he says, because that's what he says. Thank you very much for answering my question. My favorites are TNG and TOS as well.
Yeah.
I need to point out that YouTube is only letting me donate New Zealand dollars. I hope that's okay.
That's
What
fine.
is your dog's name?
We have two dogs. We have Rudy and Eve, and they're brother and sister. They're terriers. They're almost 3 years old now. And if you want to see them in their great Space Command performance, they're in a terrific scene with David Bartlett. It's a keeper. If you go on Mr. Sci-Fi, and you can find Ripple Effect, which is the 2-hour pandemic Space Command episode we did, and David Bartlett and the dogs are in a scene that you will never forget.
But the reason for
Steal the show.
Yes, you do. You do.
The dogs are cute as hell.
They are.
They push their luck on a daily basis.
They do.
They do.
Yes.
But the reason they're little rescue guys, and we got them close to Christmas. Our older dog had passed of cancer, and we thought we'd wait a while, but we couldn't get through Christmas without a dog. So we rescued these two little guys just about Christmas
When they were little
time.
puppies.
They were tiny.
Yeah.
And the rescue place, because they were close to Christmas, named the girl Eve for Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
And they named Rudy Rudolph for Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. So it was Eve and Rudy for Christmas, and so that's how they got their names.
There
from
you
the
go.
Shelter.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah.
So cool, but thanks for asking. And is there another question, Adam? You were mentioning there was another.
Yeah, we can go to our other super chat.
Yeah.
Which is from Orville, comes to us from Orville Nation.
Yes.
Who says, would love to see you running Star Trek.
Me
Mark.
too.
What is the best way right now to help out with Space Command?
There's a number of ways that one can help out. As we mentioned, if you're in LA, you can help build sets and do that kind of stuff. And but if you're not, almost anything will work. I mean, we're coordinating mailing out the fulfillment items. We're if someone wants to do a Space Command poster, we're looking for new poster artists. If someone wants to build a spacesuit, that's always something that's fun to do. There's any number of things. Visual effects, of course. Money helps a lot. Money feeds the troops, etc. So basically, the thing I would suggest that you do, Orville Nation, and I assume either you're a big fan of the Orville, or that was just a name that you were given before there was ever a show with that name, one or the other. But the way to do it is to contact Dave at DaveFilms at what is it, Dave? David? At Hotmail. So David Bartlett is davefilms@hotmail.com, and he can certainly find something for you to do. And every little bit is hugely appreciated because we don't have the $10 million plus per episode that Discovery has, and though that's speaking for now. I mean, eventually, I think we're going to be doing just fine.
But it's a great team, and you can do plenty of different jobs.
Yes, exactly. And so great. So thank you, guys. Yay! So next on my screen is David Goldenholtz. So go for it.
Yeah, all right. There you go. So, yes, same cases, different day. Sorry, I wasn't here last Thursday. I had a job. It was just a voiceover type of thing.
Sure, that's great.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And besides that, it was kind of cool. It was just for an in-house type of job. And what else is new? nothing is really happening.
Oh dear.
Still raining out here in Florida.
Uh-huh.
Still alligators happening.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah.
Still the usual.
Well,
But
if you're interested in filmmaking at all,
what?
film. If you're interested in filmmaking at all, we know several filmmakers where whenever there was a fire or anything, a riot, anything, they go out and film it.
They'd grab footage for B-roll.
For B-roll, for the stories that eventually do. So if there's an alligator or anything that's
within reason.
If you see anything and you think, well, eventually I might use that. I might use that to make my short film.
There's something to be said.
Grab it.
Yeah.
Just grab it. You have no idea. We've seen some, and it looked like great footage. It was great footage that they slipped into their pieces. So.
Well, in that case, it was the Angeles fire, and in their film it was science fiction film. So they dropped someone into the shot, like firing a big ray blaster that was causing things to go up in flames, and so it really worked. It added what they call production value. But beyond that, is there anything you need, David?
No, I'm good. I mean, there hasn't been anything recent, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, it's good to see you as always. Yes. So 3 cheers, David! Yay!
Coming out to California.
Yes, really. No alligators.
No alligators.
So, yes.
Yeah, that's the other thing is that hopefully soon I'm going to be just visiting California and saying hi to you guys and seeing what everything's going on down there. Yeah. Well,
someday we'll be able to get together again at a restaurant, and that'll be a really fun time. So
and there's always house sharing, all kinds of things on the list.
Yeah, there's tons of possibilities.
Finding places to stay.
Yeah, no, California's great.
Because we have so many people.
No humidity. So so great.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's a dry, even when it's hot out here, but it's a dry heat.
Yeah. It is, and and it's just a great place. I mean,
no, it's not. It's just heat.
Yeah.
It's an oven.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Dry or wet, it's hot.
Things are great. So great. Well, but thanks, David. Yay, David. Golden Holds, everybody. So another Mr. Sci-Fi.
Self-basting society.
Another question, Adam, for Mr. Sci-Fi?
Yes. Getting back to the original line of questions, before we were so happily interrupted by Super Chats. See what I did there?
Yes, good.
We have a question from Mark Lungo.
Yay, hi, Mark Lungo.
He asks, have you seen the Metropolis anime from 2001? It's equally based on the original film and a manga by the legendary Osamu Tezuka. Worthy in its own right.
Well, that's interesting. I'll have to check it out. No, I haven't seen it, but it's... it's the original Metropolis is the remarkable thing about the original Metropolis is for 80 years, the only version that existed was one that was severely chopped down. And a lot of the plot didn't make any sense because so much had been cut out of it. And then they found 45 minutes of it in a bootleg print in South America. And that restored virtually all of the film, with very little exceptions, and now you can watch the entire film in the way that it was intended, and that's astonishing. And
it's pretty shocking how different it is.
Yes.
Amazing.
It's like the storylines are just it makes total sense now. There was a problem.
Yeah. And there's a lot of interesting.
The VHS I used to watch was like orange and green and everything.
Yeah, no, it's just phenomenal. And interesting enough, Thea von Harbu, who wrote Metropolis, was the wife of the director Fritz Lang, and she became an ardent Nazi. And when he fled the country because he was half Jewish, his wife stayed behind because she was a Nazi. She was devoted to Hitler. And even after the war, when the Americans were doing the denazification process, they said to her, "All you have to do is recant, and you won't be charged with anything." And she said, "No, I'm a Nazi. I loved Hitler. I still love Hitler, blah, blah, blah." And they, put her in jail, basically, or put her on a working or whatever. And so it's an interesting little historical footnote. But she and...
Mark, did you ever hear the inspiration that Fritz Lang had for the film?
Enlighten me.
He came over on a ship.
Oh, yes.
And New York was entirely fogged in. You couldn't see anything. Ellis Island was locked down because their ship had influenza attack, and they were sent back to Europe.
Yeah.
Okay, all the way back, and as they were leaving, the clouds parted, and he saw the skyline of New York for the first time. He said that was his inspiration for Metropolis.
That's neat. Well, it's also interesting, the ripple effect, because Metropolis, of course, strongly influenced the design of the city in Blade Runner. You know, so there again, if you look at visual design and who influences who down the generations, down the decades, it's a fascinating thing to study. So anyway, we digress, but it's very interesting stuff. So Mark Gushwitz, you're up next. Yay, Mark Gushwitz.
Hello. So my name's Mark. I'm an editor for David Bartlett, who's brought up Under the Rainbow for the last couple of weeks. You've mentioned that, actually. I have a friend, Bobby Porter, who is actually an actor and a stunt guy on that film.
What?
So it's not the kind of movie you'd think you'd know more than one person that worked on. There's nothing new really going on. It's all the same busy stuff. Getting angrier and angrier at my graphics person, getting ready to fire him. I actually blew up on a director today because of it, because she's also using him, and she's like, she starts saying she talked to him and he was blaming me for stuff that wasn't true. And so luckily me and this director worked together for a long time, so she knows what's what.
Yes.
So when I talked about the graphics purchase last week, where I was saying he was slowing everything down, now it's at a point where it's like, I don't know what's going on. So, but we do have a guy in India doing some graphic shots that we were going to give this graphics guy, but decided to give someone else, and he's doing pretty good. So that's all moving forward on my short. But everything's the same old, just editing away on small projects. Waiting for a project from a filmmaker in Vegas to be sent to me. She's sending me a drive with all her footage. And that's that. It just kind of working. Not much play. Don't get to watch much. Although I started watching The Mandalorian, and I think people are going to hate me because I don't understand the popularity of it. I feel like I'm 3 episodes in and not a single thing has happened yet.
Yeah.
And so I'm not really sure what the appeal is.
It hasn't.
Somebody can explain that to me someday. So, but no, it's just working and sitting in this office and waiting for Corona to go away so I can do something.
Yeah. Well, yep. I was debating whether to mention The Mandalorian. I mean, I started watching it. It hasn't really grabbed me either yet, though the technical aspects of it, the way they're shooting it, is just amazing. Just amazing. The fact that they've got like a 70-foot wide curving video screen, and they do all their VFX in prep, and the camera is linked to the VFX so that the parallax moves as the camera moves. That's just amazing. And so
I want to be impressed with all that, but when you watch a Star Wars movie, they generally it's so everything's so filled with detail and everything. Where a lot of these sets seem kind of empty, and like I said, nothing's going on. Of course, I had just finished watching The Dark Crystal, where like the sets are just incredible because they were all designed by hand and practical and all that. But I'm watching the movie and the show, The Mandalorian, and it was nice to kind of see Carl Weathers working again. But other than that, it was kind of like every episode there's action scenes in it, but I don't know, it just feels like nothing's really.
Yeah.
There's like no story really.
Yeah, and again, there's such a huge over amount of everything on television now. It's just crazy, and so there's plenty of stuff to entertain us if we don't like one thing or another, and but
is there anything good sci-fi that maybe I should check out? Because it's either horror or sci-fi for me right now when I'm all locked in.
The Boys is kind of interesting. That's on Prime, and it's a sort of a superhero, very dark superhero show. It's not bad, and Raised by Wolves is crazy and really, really not great. We're watching. It's not science fiction, but a friend of mine directed some of it. The Good Lord Bird, which is about John Brown, and Ethan Hawke plays John Brown. It's a mixed bag, but interesting. But yeah, I'm not seeing anything where it's like, gosh, this is the best thing I've ever seen. There's nothing that's really grabbing me particularly at this stage, so.
The Hilary Swank series, I thought that was great.
I haven't watched enough.
It's not exactly science fiction technically, but it is rockets going to Mars.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't watched enough of it really to have a definitive opinion, But the first season is entirely them getting to Mars. And so I find myself, again, like with you, Mark, you get impatient with a show when it's like, all right, let's get to the cool part, but it's certainly well produced. And, again, I'm not going to give a definitive answer on that one because I've only watched like one episode so far. And, so we'll see.
Feels to me when they got these 8 to 10 episodes now, they feel like they can take their time.
Yeah, Jesus, it's a problem. It's a problem, and it's funny because with Space Command, I highly recommend watching Space Command because the way I structured Space Command was it's like a 14-hour season, but every 2 hours is a beginning, middle, and end, and they build to a larger story. So as a result, because so many series, as you're saying, it's like a 12, 13-hour story, and you just watch the entire thing, and often they fall apart at the end. And you go, Jesus, why did I spend that much time watching this thing? Because again, when we were growing up, shows told the beginning, middle, and end in an hour because of the rules of syndication, where they would be shown out of order. You couldn't tell a story that went beyond like maybe a 2-parter, and and that's the reason. But now that it's all one story over a season, that has very big flaws. I think Discovery and Picard both have suffered because of that. The Orville, they went the other direction. They tell stories, episodically, and like a one story per hour, more or less, and that gives them a lot more possibility.
Even back then, when they told like Battlestar Galactica had a larger story throughout. Like every episode still had a beginning, middle, and an end.
Yes.
And I kind of appreciate that. Before I watched Star Crystal, I was talking to Kevin Clash, who's a friend of mine, and he asked me why I hadn't watched it yet, and it's basically because you get 3 episodes in, and you're like, but now I need to know how it ends, and I'm going to have to watch 10 episodes more.
Yeah.
I'm not liking it.
No.
Or you get to the end, and it'll be to be continued, and then they'll cancel it.
Yes.
And,
I know. It's very challenging. Structure is always a challenge, and if you're good at it, you know how to structure something where it remains interesting. But really, the way TV shows are done now, you have to structure a season like it's a novel. It's much more analogous to structuring a novel. Fortunately, I've written both novels and TV, so I can structure from an 8-minute cartoon, for God's sake, to like an entire novel. And but it's like building a house, and you have to really know how to make the structure of that house hold. And the bigger the story, the bigger the structure, and it has more demands on it to tell a story. And pacing is always a big part of it, because if you don't know how to pace, as you say, you'll have an episode where nothing happens, and you're just kind of twiddling your thumb. Or another problem I see with a lot of TV shows now is they might start 1 or 2 or 3 episodes, maybe be able to sustain that, and then it just all goes south radically, where they kind of are making up as they go along, and they don't know what they're doing, and So yeah. So there's a lot of bullshit. I mean, another show that was interesting was Watchmen, the Damon Lindelof one, but again, not my favorite show, but interesting. So anyway, that's some of it. So let's see so anything else you need, Mark?
No, that's it. Everything's the same. If I were to talk about what's going on in my life, you just rewind to the last week and the week before. It's exactly.
Well, we could just record it and play it each week.
Yeah, I would just do that. But that's good because I have been busy over the last couple of weeks, so that's always good. I just, wish it paid a little bit more. But other than that, it's at least I'm working.
Yes.
And a lot of people can't say that right now.
Yes.
Don't you have a podcast show with a kind of interesting guest coming up?
Yeah, well, I don't know. We haven't talked to that guest yet, but yeah, no, actually, I could bring up the podcast, which is doing really well.
Oh, you dropped out.
We lost you.
Oh, the sound dropped out. Oh, there we go. Now we can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I have a podcast called The Screenform, and we had an issue with one of our interviews, so it's a long period between 2 episodes. I'm working on that one right now.
Cool.
It's actress Elaine, who is an actress with disability.
We know her.
2.5 hours. I've been trying to cut her down to an hour and a half, but she's just so interesting and
cool.
so passionate about what she talks about. It'll probably be a long episode. But I guess Nathan has talked to David about being on the show, because I keep telling Nathan that David tells the greatest stories. As much as probably when we're going to talk to him beforehand, I think we're going to center a lot of the show around sound, since he did a lot of sound work. I can't wait to incorporate some of his stories into this. David has become one of my favorite people to talk movies with because, no offense to anybody, I don't know a lot of people, but I meet so many people in this business who don't really seem to love movies. David seems to really have a passion for film.
Yes.
And I love talking to him about it because of it. And his story, he really knows how to tell a story. Similar to you, Mark, you really know how to tell a story really well. And my friend Bobby Porter, who was on Evan Rainbow, one of the best people telling stories. I love talking movies, and when people who have more experience than me can tell me stories about their background that I can learn from, it's the best thing.
Yeah.
So, I told Nathan I really wanted to have David on, and so I guess we're going to be talking soon about that because he'll be the next episode before Joseph Doherty, who's going to also be on.
Yeah, that's neat.
We'll be talking to him as well. For people who haven't heard the podcast, we've had some pretty interesting people. We've had Mark on. We've had this guy, Stephen L. Sears, who was the producer for Princess Xena. And I've been told by people like Brian, who had never seen Princess Xena before listening to the episode, that he still really loved the episode because we talked a lot about character and stuff. And then we also had this stunt guy, John Mania, who's working on Falcon and the Winter Soldier. He is Sebastian Stan's stunt guy. So he's the main stunt guy on that. We had him on, and he's now starting to connect us with some people that I'm hoping to connect well with. This one guy, Dave McCumber, who's a stunt guy. I'm actually going to try and get some advice on getting some work in the editing field when it comes to pre-vises. So it's been a really, really interesting show, interesting ride. Because we had Sebastian Stan's stunt double on. See what you opened up, Dave? Sebastian Stan has actually listened to the show and told the stunt guy that he really loved the show because he also listened to the other episodes. And so now my thing is we got to get a quote from him. I immediately thought of Mark. For some reason, I have a feeling you would have said, we got to reach out to him.
Yes.
Not only get him on the show, but get a quote from him to put on our website.
Yes.
Saying, love the show, Sebastian Stan, Winter Soldier.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, and one thing that's fun also in terms of what you're talking about is David had an experience of this to a great degree, but also because I grew up in LA, you could meet the amazing geniuses of the golden age of Hollywood. I mean, David was lucky enough to meet Robert Wise and get to know him a bit, and I, I mean, it was amazing who you could encounter. For instance, the first week I was hired on Friday the 13th, the series at Paramount. This was my first story editing job. They were throwing a party one evening to celebrate the 75th anniversary of Paramount. And what they'd done was, when you first drive through the gates at Paramount, there's this gigantic parking lot. They had converted the entire parking lot into a party space. And the guests who were there, and they were just totally accessible. They were all sitting at tables. Billy Wilder was there, Sean Connery, John Travolta, on and on. I mean, it was just Hollywood royalty. And it was phenomenal. I remember, I went to a screening of Sunset Boulevard with Billy Wilder. Frank Darabont, this is some years later, Frank Darabont learned that Billy Wilder hadn't seen Sunset Boulevard on a big screen since it first came out. So he arranged this private screening at the I think it was at the Egyptian Theater. And I was sitting, Billy Wilder was in the row in front of me. To watch Sunset Boulevard with the director of that film was astonishing. And I remember when I was at UCLA, I took a lot of film courses, and one day the teacher said, we're not going to have the lecture I was playing today because we have a special guest, and they rolled in John Huston, and he was elderly and he was in a wheelchair, but when he started talking, he just came alive, and it was just phenomenal.
I would love to get some of these older filmmakers on because the show started off as one thing where we were going to, have this comparison angle, but it's turned into a totally different animal because the people we've interviewed have turned it into that. And we've gotten a pretty good response from the podcast. So now it's become more about just talking to people about, their specialties, but digging deeper into that, maybe ask questions that people don't generally ask.
Yes.
And so, like I asked you about Friday the 13th. When was the last time somebody asked about Friday the 13th?
That was fun.
But I was legitimately interested in that. But
Yes.
I look around the world now and I talk to people about movies, and they don't seem to know a lot about the past.
No.
And I'd love to be able to bring that back by being able to maybe what I loved about Siskel and Ebert was they talked about the blockbuster movies and then they snuck in the art house movies on their show so that you got a real lesson about art house movies without really realizing.
Yes.
I feel like if I bring on some of these people that I want to bring on and then start asking about, sneaking in the information about the past, like this girl Elaine Gruba, she was just in a movie that's supposed called "Bring Me the Head of Lance Henriksen."
Huh.
And
Yes.
I asked her at the end of the show, I asked her about it, and I said to her, I find it really fascinating because I'm a big Sam Peckinpah fan, and he had made a movie called Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia, which I'm sure the title is a play on. And she looked at me and had no idea what I was talking about.
No.
And my co-host had no idea what I was talking about. I was like, Sam Peckinpah, I mean, how...
She named that after that without knowing about that film?
Yeah.
No, she didn't name it. She was in a movie, the filmmaker.
It had that name.
And I don't know that, and I actually don't know the filmmaker did that. It just, how could it not have been? So
Right.
He asked that. But I'm always surprised by people who don't know their film history and
Yes.
talk to them about stuff. And film history is really fascinating. I mean, when David told me that Jerry Goldsmith story, because he told it to me before he told it at the table, I was just all ears. It was just so fascinating to me to find out all these little things that go on behind the scene. And when I talk to people who want to break into movies, I'm always shocked that they don't know this information. If you truly love movies, you would be, wouldn't you be just opening up your world to find out as much as you can? I just bought a book by Art Linson about his life in movies. And there's some details in there about movies like Rocky and stuff I've never heard. And to me, it's like, wow, this is fascinating.
Yes.
I want to know this stuff if they love movies.
No, it's
so
neat.
we're trying to do that with the podcast now. So
Yes.
Hopefully we can get some older people on. If I
Sure.
get Bobby Porter on, that would be great because he's been in the business since 1968.
Mm-hmm.
He actually worked on E.T.
Wow.
And that. So I'm exactly older. What you're saying.
Read the older.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
I said I'm kind of older.
You're kind of older.
Well, yeah, I think. Yeah. Well, we won't comment on that. So great. So anything else, Mark?
But no, actually, I do know what you mean by that. But I mean, even going back to the days of Speed and stuff.
Yes.
Those are movies that I think are really kind of being forgotten nowadays. And
Yes. Well, I have a theory about that, and I'll explain it briefly, and then we can move on. The thing was that when we were growing up, people who were sort of in their 50s and 60s, there were basically 3 networks. There was sort of like local channels that were showing things syndicated. But it was all network stuff or studio movies or whatever, and there was PBS. So from my generation and the one after me, you pretty much got to watch everything. So there'd be movies that were in reruns, and you didn't have to seek stuff out. Laurel and Hardy, Abbott and Costello, all these things just kind of came to you because there was so much fewer number of channels. Then we got cable TV, and now we have basically an unlimited number, thousands. And so rather than having something just delivered to you where you can sample it, like Laurel and Hardy, for instance, you have to go in search of it. And that means that it's much harder to acquaint yourself with those things. You have to know about them. Whereas
also being more acquainted to the newer movies, like they talk Lion King, so I say Lion King was an amazing movie. No, not the live action.
Yes.
Because now these remakes and everything are taking over, and people are forgetting
right
history, which I find is a shame because RoboCop's one of my all-time favorite movies.
Yeah.
And whenever I say it, I have to say
the original.
I have to say the original. I have to say RoboCop. The Verhoeven movie, or they think I'm talking about that other thing. That
Yes.
And so I think people kind of get lost in that.
Yes, but I think
although the recent Lion King is pretty amazing.
No, it's not.
Again. Okay. Well,
bad.
Moving on. So great. But yes, yay! 3 cheers. Excellent. So, is there another Mr. Sci-Fi question, Adam?
Yes, we've got lots. I'm going to go to a question from Gregory Krug.
Great.
Who asks, Mark, do you have a prized possession?
Elaine. Elaine is the center of my life, the jewel of my life. She's my treasure and makes every day worth living. So, but a possession, let me think. What do I love? Oh God, there's so many things. Well, like for instance, this spacesuit. I mean, those spacesuits are terrific. The one that's the real spacesuit there That was used in Twilight Zone in an episode called The Parallel. My mom bought it for me when I was 12, so that's a prized possession. I've got first editions of Huckleberry Finn and Great Gatsby and all sorts of stuff, and those are nice. What do you think? What would you say is my prized possession?
I don't think you have one. You have a lot.
No, I've got a lot of things that are very meaningful to me.
Suggestion. One thing you mentioned to me more than probably any other thing collectively is To Kill a Mockingbird.
Yeah, I have a To Kill a Mockingbird poster signed by all the actors and the Harper Lee and Horton Foote, who Harper Lee wrote the novel, Horton Foote wrote the screenplay. It's a pretty cool thing. My Ray Bradbury, the first edition of Fahrenheit 451 that Ray signed to me, is pretty cool. Yeah, and I mean, there's many things. It's just.
You should put the camera at your book collection.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've really ever done that.
Yeah, it's
2 walls of paperback books and first editions. It's just astounding. It's hundreds of original first edition books.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, it's someday I'm going to do a Mr. Sci-Fi about some of the first editions, because back in the day when I was working at the studios, I actually collected first editions of Victorian novelists. So I have a first edition of The Time Machine. I've got a first edition of David Copperfield, a first edition First State of Huckleberry Finn, just tons of stuff, and first edition Nicholas Nickleby, on and on. So, but yeah,
I think I have it. It's Alice in Wonderland.
I don't have a first of Alice, but I have an early edition. I've got a first American edition of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, et cetera, et cetera. First edition Connecticut Yankee and King Arthur's Court. I mean, those are fun things, but there's always something new, something cool. I don't collect to. It's funny. There's a movie producer who had his collection was a first edition of every novel written in the 20th century. I don't have collections like that because I just sort of collect what interests me at any given time. But every now and then I get something that's really fun. Like, for instance, Hal Holbrook has done a terrific one-man show of Mark Twain for many decades, and I have the hardcover. I have both a signed hardcover and a signed paperback of Mark Twain Tonight, signed by Hal Holbrook. Well, when I was at a recent performance of that a few years ago, the guy sitting next to me just coincidentally happened to be Dick Smith, who was the greatest makeup man of his age. I mean, he inspired Rick Baker. He was phenomenal. And he did the Twain makeup when Hal Holbrook did that for television. So I have a signed first edition of Mark Twain Tonight, the book, signed by Hal Holbrook and Dick Smith. And so that's just fun stuff, My friend Theodore Sturgeon, his first book had an introduction by Ray, so I have a signed copy signed by Ray and Ted. Stuff like that. The signed script that Nichelle Nichols gave me when I was a kid, when I was 10 and met her, the signed Star Trek script she gave me. I mean, all that stuff is just kind of, it's nice to have. It's nice to have, but often with these things, there's an association with the people in my life who I care about, the writers I've come to know, that makes it very special. So particularly the Ray Bradbury stuff, because he and I were such good friends. So that's long-winded answer. So let's see. So Thane, you're up. Go for it, Thane. Yay! Good.
There. Well, every time I come to this, I'm reminded that I'm highly trained and poorly educated. I know nothing about what we've been talking about here other than little bits and pieces. 2 PhDs and 3 master's degrees. I can take second derivatives into a variety of things, but that's training. That's not education. So, but I do have one movie trivial thing. My dad built the stairway in Gone with the Wind.
Wow.
And he built it 3 times, as he told the story. The first time he built it as a finished carpenter would build it with the finest hardwoods and so on. And the director came on set and said, I don't like it. And they towed it out to the back lot and burned it up.
Oh my God.
And so they built a second one, and the director came on set and said, well, where's the platforms for the cameras and the lights and so on, the special, that wouldn't be on a standard in your house stairway, but needed to be there to handle the special equipment. It's not on the plans, so they hauled it out to the backlog and burned it. And the third time, he made sure that everything they wanted was on the plans and built. But they always used the best hardwoods. There was no cardboard or particle board or whatever. And so, and he did several other movies. I think the last movie that I understand he worked on was a movie called Written on the Wind with, I think, Robert Stack. I'm not sure. But and my personal connection then was we lived in the San Fernando Valley, and I delivered papers to John Wayne, Burl Ives, Johnny Montana.
Wow.
And one of the Sons of the Pioneers. They used to gather on the porch down the street and play. One of the guys lived down the street, and they gather on the porch to rehearse in the afternoon.
Were these divorce papers?
Divorce papers?
No, Dave is making a joke about your delivering papers.
People being remarried constantly in the old.
But we can.
Mickey Rooney would have worked better with Mickey.
Yeah, it'll.
Well, at any rate.
Yeah.
So the news of the day for me is I just got a note earlier today that the movie I was in with Kathy Bates last fall, which I actually have a couple of lines with Kathy Bates, is finally finished through post, and there's going to be an online party this Saturday where I'm an invited guest to view the movie, and there's going to be discussion afterwards. And in the invite, I was specifically singled out that we really want Thane to be there. So that's my excitement of the week.
That's great.
I'm going to do 12 minutes of my solo show, I think next Tuesday night, if I got the schedule right, on a little group that we've been hosting on. It's called Friend Circle Night. Not unlike this, except we offer the opportunity for talent to bring material that's in development, and so I'm gonna do that, and just keeping on. I have a collection of things that I'm hoping that Dave Bartlett is going to arrange to pick up from my garage, since they're starting to pile up, and get out to set. And then
actually have that person with a truck to do that with now, to get those sheets of plywood, so we can do that.
Great. Monday? Sunday?
I'll ask about it. Monday's possible.
Okay.
We can just have our meeting continuously throughout the table meeting and bore everyone to tears. Or I'll talk to you later.
That's fine. And then, I hope at some point I can get out there and do some, or maybe some of the carpentry work can be done in my shop here and then delivered.
Great. Sounds great.
In making sawdust in the set, and make sawdust in my garage.
Cool. That sounds great. Anything else? Anything else you need, Thane?
Just like everybody else, looking for the next opportunity. I keep writing and honing my work, and I think looking to the end of the year or the first part of next year probably is going to mean streaming my one-man show.
Cool. Great.
That's great.
At the Whitefire.
Great.
It just doesn't seem like, I just saw that Broadway isn't going to open until June next year.
Huh.
I think
Wow.
that probably suggests much what we're going to be facing here for any kind of gathering of crowds or whatever.
Yes.
In my other life, I was very much involved in the health business, and And I've been very concerned about this at both the micro level, given my age and health conditions and so on, and gender, and at the macro level, what the potential havoc this can have on people, both from the standpoint of the disease and people getting sick and dying and so on, and from the impact on the economy of things being closed down, people not having access to basic income to do the housing and so on.
Mm-hmm.
And so much of our life in this country is tied up in finding ourselves in our job and our income, and so it's taking a toll on both sides of that question. Micro level, people get sick, some die, some are healed in 4 days, and some take vitamins and eat healthy, and it seems like they're fine. But I just saw today somebody in my neighborhood lost a mother, a father, and a sister in the last week.
Wow.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Anyway, on that happy note, just keep on keeping on.
Yeah. Yay. Thank you, Thane. Is there another Mr. Sci-Fi question, Adam?
There sure is. We're going to go to a question from El Johnorino.
Hello.
Who says, hello again.
Yeah.
When directing, do you mostly give the camera blocking, or is that for the DP to worry about?
No.
Also,
yeah.
I saw Space Command Episode 1 was mostly mounted camera work, just a couple of shaky cam looking scenes.
Yes.
Good decision because it's so over or badly done.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Elaine and I always work out the blocking and the camera moves. We'll be in consultation with our team, but we never just say, hey, just, whatever you think this will look good.
We usually have a pre-rehearsal.
Yeah.
We have a picture of what we want on camera
Right.
at a given time, and then we'll walk through it with our DP, who's extremely experienced and very, very good. And then we say, oh, well, I can get that from this angle or this angle. And so we sort of work it out together. We have a lot of faith in our cinematographer.
Right.
But we start out by creating a shot list of what we want covered emotionally.
Yes.
And discuss what the emotional impact that we want. And he'll often come up with very good ideas.
Yes.
To get what we want.
And it's fun because, coming out of TV has a very different style of shooting than features. And, so basically the TV I came up in, you'd shoot your master, your over shoulders, and your close-ups. It's changed over the years how you shoot, but I like that way of doing things because it means that you catch the moments. If you're too wild in your camera work, you may miss the emotional moments. You may miss the subtleties of performance. And for me, the subtlety of performance is what really matters, the authenticity of the performance. Because if you're not moved by the story and the characters, particularly the characters, you're not going to be engaged in what we're doing. So for me, visual design is always secondary, and VFX are always secondary to performance and the storyline as the characters are involved. I love the visual stuff, and obviously I have a great deal of fun working with my VFX artists and my designers, but that's always, so in my head, because again, when I started in animation, you had to break down every single shot in the script. A half-hour script was 55 pages. And so as a result, you had to really see it in your head. Like it would literally, like, let's say you're writing a He-Man script, it'd be like, close shot He-Man, then he'd have a line, and you'd have like two shot Teela and He-Man, then the next shot might be all inclusive as Skeletor walks in or whatever, it's like, or low angle shot or high angle shot. Everything was always, you had to call every single shot, and so you get in the habit of seeing the shots in your head very specifically, and so it's never it's never a thing where it's like that isn't a key element of how we're doing things. But with Space Command, because it's on such a insanely ambitious scale, sometimes we would get on set and the sets wouldn't be what we needed them to be, or various and sundry. And so then you adapt and you say, okay, here, like for instance, Dave, I think you were on set the day where it was the scene where the conference room scene where the green screen wasn't wide enough for the conference room. So what we did on the fly was we said, okay, let's have a locked off camera and divide it into 3 sections and move the green screen to accommodate those 3 sections. And we shot in the 3 sections and then put them together in post.
It worked for Cinerama.
It worked for us too. And but the point being, no. So we never just say to the DP, wing it. You can't. And you learn as you go. You're always going to be making mistakes. You're always going to say, "Fuck, we don't have that," or F dash dash dash. For those of you who are not here in Los Angeles, it's you're always going to say, "There's a shot I need that I don't have." Now, thankfully, because of visual effects, because of tricks that Dave and I can do with the with post, or Elaine and I can talk about it and figure out some trick. There's ways of making stuff work even if you don't have the shot, and that's always kind of like doing a magic trick. And but it's very, very fun coming up with stuff out of whole cloth. I really enjoy doing that because it's fun
or augmenting the shots that we have. That
yes.
Aren't quite right.
Yes, or saying, can we flip this? Can we add this? Can we? It's just fun. Because when I started in the business, particularly in live action, you didn't have those options. You either got it on the day or you were screwed. I mean, there was no wire removal. There was no. You were shooting on 16 millimeter or 35 millimeter. You couldn't correct stuff. If something didn't work, it just didn't work, and you could do some minimal things. For instance, I remember in one episode I wrote of a show called Beyond Reality. I set this story in the subway, and they could afford to rent the subway tunnel, but they couldn't afford to rent the subway train. So they have a shot where this guy's on the tracks and the subway train's coming toward him. So they built the facade of the front of a subway train, and in the dailies you could see people's feet pushing it, right? Because their feet were like under the level they were pushing it. And so in post they were able to remove their feet, but that was about the best they could do back in like 1992 or 93. And but now, of course, we've got a whole bag of tricks that are fairly easy, and that's, thank God for that, So yeah. So was that a Mr. Sci-Fi question? I've gotten lost. That was, yes. Okay, yes, great. Yes. So now the high point of the evening. It's Elaine. Yay, Elaine! 3 cheers. So go for it.
Well, there's Magic Time, of course, and I'll let Mark handle that.
And Space Command.
And Space Command.
Yes.
Which is mostly what we're doing, and I'll let Mark handle that. I have a couple of things in work that are off being looked at. One thing that we spent, I think we've mentioned before, which was Subversive, which is the South African piece about the actual family.
Lord Peter Hain.
Hain, based on his
book
about his mother and father, who were extremely active against and stand against apartheid. And there have been some struggles in getting that so far placed, which is a bit of a surprise. It moved from being a screenplay into a 4-part miniseries, and we're still seeking a placement. But one of the things that came up in the interim was I was focused very, very much on the family. And when Black Lives Matter became so intense, it became clear that there was something missing, despite the fact that I wanted to focus on the family, which was the Black leadership, which is what was driving them toward their actions.
Can you lean forward?
Yeah, you're not. They can't hear you.
Sure.
Yeah, you're just.
It's
the silent movie version.
They were the membership of the basically the Black and the Indian were the leaders, and they considered themselves the foot soldiers. But the actual leaders were off screen. They would come back with what they were learning. But with Black Lives Matter, even though I wanted to focus on the family, that became really twigged. It was not very comfortable. So we're putting out another approach where instead of the people and what they said being off screen, we're bringing them on screen. And what these people were like and what they said was just magnificent. So that so things where the family was sharing it with the children, we'll see the actual individuals sharing it, both on part 1 where they're in South Africa, and as reminders. They'll be appearing in memory, which I had other characters doing once they come to London, once they're forced to go to London, and a great deal more happens to the family. So that's more work, but we're hoping that that would not only help the sale, it makes me feel better because of, it's always very uncomfortable because there are all of these terrible movies where whites say blacks, that's out of the picture. But in terms of people like Mandela, there have been really good movies just about Mandela. So it's interweaving a whole bunch of different kinds of people saying it's all of our problem. And one of the reasons that we wanted it to be about just an ordinary family doing remarkable things was that we did what Peter said was, since we're trying to talk to everybody, he didn't want it to be about Mandela, who was a friend. He said, because Mandela, nobody they can say, well, that's Mandela. I can't be that. I can't do that. And he was like such a brilliant, remarkable figure that,
I guess you have to do it like this.
Remarkable figure that you have to stand up and admire, but you can't connect and say, I could do that. So the objective was to say ordinary people can do these remarkable things. And but now the people who were inspiring these remarkable things are now going to be on screen, and some of the things they did and said were really, truly remarkable. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun to see them. I mean, like there's an example where they at Lily's Leaf, where they had captured a lot of people and they were putting them on trial, and they were told to plead innocent or guilty. And they refused to plead innocent or guilty. They said, we can't, because it is the law that should be on trial. Now, what they were facing was a death sentence. They were sure, if they did not plead and put themselves on the mercy of the court. So they assumed they would be hanged, but they said, this must be the stand we take for the movement. And so they took that stand. They did not plead. And now this will be part of the movie. And they said the law should be on trial, but they assumed that they would be hanged. But they were not hanged. They were sent off for life to Robben Island. And they were scuttled off like really quickly. Usually there was a few days before people would have to leave, and they were figuring out what's going on. They thought they'd be hanged, and they thought that they would have a few days to say goodbye. And people always went in the boat to Robben Island, not helicopter, but they were taken by helicopter. And what they didn't realize was that the UN people were getting really, really angry by then at South Africa. And these people had been icons. And basically the government got scared. And so their lives were saved by something that was being hidden from them, which was the world was getting angry at South Africa. And so, but they didn't know, and they assumed they were giving up their life to take that stand. So just really fascinating stuff to put into the piece. So that's what I've been working on.
Great. Yay. A few cheers. So is there another Mr. Sci-Fi question, Adam?
Yeah, I got one more in me.
Great.
Let's do, we were just speaking of Elaine.
Yes.
Hayes494 asks, you, Mark, would you ever like to see a Star Trek or Space Command character named and or based off of Elaine?
A lot of the characters that I write actually are inspired by Elaine. Anytime you have a strong female character in my writing, it's basically Elaine one way or another. So that she's always influencing all of that. When you have a character who's principled, a character who's brave, a character who's, dynamic and interesting and so forth. Yeah, it's tolerant, long-suffering, patient, etc. Yes. So she appears in various guises, particularly in Space Command and a lot of the other things I've written. So, yeah. So there you go. And so I guess now it's me, wonderful me.
Well, shouldn't there be a Mr. Sci-Fi?
We just had one.
Okay.
Wasn't that a Mr. Sci-Fi?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
That's right.
So, okay, I'll sit up. So, hi guys, it's good to see everyone. Good to see everyone on Mr. Sci-Fi. Essentially what's going on is As Elaine said, we're working very hard with our team on finishing the second hour of Space Command so we can ship the DVDs and Blu-rays of our 2-hour pilot to everyone who's ordered it. And beyond that, we're working to shoot. We started shooting hour 4 so we can complete hours 3 and 4 of Space Command as well, not including, of course, the 2-hour pandemic bonus episode that we did recently, which is on Mr. Sci-Fi. Beyond that, we're doing the Showrunners Network, where we're creating, a slate of 6 series where we're going to shoot all 6 pilots, 1 season of one of the shows. We're raising $36 to $40 million to do that, but I'm in search of a specific document, and I don't know if anyone can help me with that, but it's specifically a cost to profit statement on a successful TV show. So it'd be a low quote, a medium quote, and a high quote, but not theoretical, not general. It has to be a specific real show, and basically the profit statements. And the name of the series can be redacted, the name of the network, the studio, the company, all that stuff can be redacted. But we need that as a document that the investors can look at and say, okay, what you're telling us we might realize as a possible profit, you're basing it on these specific documents. It is extremely hard to get those documents. I spent yesterday emailing back and forth with J.J. Abrams, with Glenn Mazzara, who had been a showrunner on Walking Dead, and he was on The Shield and so forth. Many of my friends who are at different production companies and studios, and they're all saying the same thing, which is this is confidential material, and they don't feel that they can even redact it and take it out, send it out. So if anyone has ideas, because it's not theoretical, it cannot be, it has to be the real deal. And so I'm going to be talking to more people tomorrow, emailing more of my friends in the executive ranks and the showrunner ranks, but I suspect I'm going to get the same answer. So I have to figure out a way to crack this. And so that's what I'm looking for now. So that's, but meantime, I'm writing the new book. I'm, doing all the things I'm supposed to be doing, and including walking the dogs. And so, which I will do in a moment. So that's kind of the main thing for me. We're going to have another spacesuit contest for Space Command soon. We're going to have a poster contest with great prizes. And if you're interested in being part of Space Command or any of the things we're doing, we're creating one show with Rockney O'Bannon, who created Farscape and Defiance and, oh my gosh, Alien Nation, Sequest, Cult. He's currently executive producer on Evil. We're creating another show with Mark Fergus and Hawk Ostby, who created The Expanse and run that show. And they wrote Children of Men and Iron Man. And I'm in conversations to do a new Rod Serling series. So we'll see how that progresses. But so far, it's progressing extremely well. So we shall see. But lots to come, guys. So anything anyone else needs at this stage? No?
I just like to say that I haven't mentioned this in a while, but they put up the 9th webisode of a series I've been cutting for a friend on the weekend. I've got two to finish.
Mm-hmm.
Called and a table member. She hasn't been here in a while. She's busy and pregnant. Anyway, the series is called. It's not sci-fi, but the series is called South of Sanity, and the website is southofsanityshow.com. And go look at some episodes.
Well, cool. So so it's good seeing everyone, and stay safe, stay well. We're here every Thursday at 5:30 Pacific time, both from Mr. Sci-Fi Livecast and the table. Beyond that, again, if you want to buy a shirt that I drew of Obi-Wan Kenobi in my youth, it's I've ordered one. I'm going to be wearing it. God knows, and I'll be thinking more about that question of some of my prized possessions, because I do have a number of them, and I can definitely talk about that in future days. Even my a signed copy of Memos from Purgatory by Harlan Ellison, the first edition of that, a signed edition.
A piece of Ray Bradbury's
house. Yes. I also have a piece of the MGM back lot. When I was a kid, they had the MGM auction, and they were going to tear down the entire back lot. It was the greatest back lot ever in the golden age of movies, and it was used extensively in Twilight Zone. And they were going to bulldoze it, and I snuck behind the fence during the MGM auction, and there was a facade of a brick building, which was all fake brick. It was chicken wire, and part of it was coming off the wall, so I took it home. But that piece, and I still have that. So it's God knows how many great MGM movies were shot on that street. So really cool stuff.
You have a 1 hour pilot of Space Command, your dream project of all time.
I do, and all the spacesuits and all of that stuff. And I have these 2 wonderful dogs, and Elaine makes every day bright. So that's it for now. We'll talk soon, guys, and thanks for everything. Take care. Have a good week. Bye. Bye.
Guys, stay safe.
And then bye, guys. See you next time.
Somebody needs a little bit better.